In the dusty frontier town of Redstone Ridge, where the wind carried more secrets than songs and danger hid behind every swinging saloon door, lived a man whose name made outlaws whisper in the dark. Sheriff Colton Graves, the man who feared nothing. Legend said that fear had been beaten out of him the day he stood between a grizzly bear and a group of trapped miners at just 17. Others swore he had ice instead of blood. But the truth, known only to Colton, was far simpler. He had seen enough darkness in his life that nothing left the same mark twice. Every sunrise, he walked out of his small wooden home, buckled his worn leather belt, and pinned the shining star to his chest, a symbol not of authority, but of responsibility he carried like a burden carved into bone. Redstone Ridge relied on him, and he never broke a promise. One late afternoon, as the sky burned red and gold, trouble rolled into town like a storm clinging to a man's shadow. A lone rider approached, dragging behind him the rumors of a notorious outlaw gang called the Black Coyote Brotherhood, a pack of ruthless killers led by Jasper, Black Jack, Morelli, a man who believed fear itself was a weapon. The rider stumbled into the sheriff's office, bleeding from a gunshot wound, breath shallow as a dying fire. "Sheriff, they're coming," he rasped, gripping Colton's coat. "Black Jack has your name carved on a bullet." Colton didn't flinch. He helped the man into a chair, pressed a cloth to his wound, and handed him water. "You're safe here," he said calmly, though the air around him crackled with the weight of the message. News spread fast. By nightfall, the entire town buzzed like a disturbed hive. Merchants boarded windows. Parents kept their children inside. Even the saloon's piano, usually louder than thunder, fell silent under whispers of dread. But Sheriff Colton walked the main street with steady boots, checking lanterns, locking doors, and offering quiet reassurances. Fear belonged to other men, caution belonged to him. Just before midnight, a distant echo of horses thundered across the valley. Lanterns flickered as a cold wind swept through. The townsfolk peeked through cracks in their shutters, hearts pounding. Colton stepped out alone, shotgun slung across his back, revolver at his side, and a matchstick between his teeth. At the edge of town, silhouettes emerged, dozens of riders with torches blazing like wild orange teeth in the dark. Black Jack himself rode front and center, a scar slicing across his face, his grin sharper than any blade. "I've come for you, Sheriff!" he hollered, voice slicing through the night. "My boys say you're a man with no fear. Let's test that." The sheriff stepped forward until he stood alone against the horde, dust swirling around his boots. "You think fear makes a man weak," Colton said, voice low and steady. "But fear is a choice, courage is a duty." Black Jack laughed. "Duty's gonna get you buried." The gang rode closer, weapons drawn, sparks dancing off their horseshoes. The townspeople trembled behind walls, praying they wouldn't become targets. Still, the sheriff didn't budge. When the first outlaw raised his rifle, Colton's hand moved faster than a rattlesnake. A single gunshot cracked the silence. The outlaw dropped. The next few seconds erupted into chaos, horses rearing, men shouting, torches scattering. But even in the storm of violence, Colton was precise, controlled, unstoppable. He fought like a man whose soul had already made peace with death and therefore refused to bow to it. The gang retreated momentarily. Regrouping outside town, Black Jack narrowed his eyes. "You may not fear death, Sheriff," he growled. "But I promise, you will fear me." And with that threat hanging heavy as thunder, the night ended. But every person in Redstone Ridge knew this was just the beginning. As Sheriff Colton stood alone on that dirt road, lanterns flickering around him, he understood exactly what tomorrow would bring. War. And he would face it without trembling. Because when a man protects something greater than himself, fear becomes nothing more than a shadow. If you're enjoying this story, make sure you subscribe to the channel so you never miss the next chapter of courage, danger, and legendary tales of the Wild West. Dawn washed Redstone Ridge in a pale gold glow, but the warmth couldn't melt the tension gripping the town like a fist. The Black Coyote Brotherhood had vanished into the hills for the night, but Sheriff Colton Graves knew they weren't gone. They were preparing. The air itself felt too still, like the land was holding its breath. Colton spent the early hours reinforcing the town's defenses, setting strategic positions, sharpening his instincts as men sharpen steel. A few brave townsfolk insisted on helping, but Colton refused to risk innocent lives. "You hired me to protect you," he told them. "Today I earn every cent." As he stood outside the sheriff's office, wiping dust off his badge, an unlikely visitor arrived, a teenage boy named Finn, trembling with determination. He held a rusty rifle close to his chest. "Sheriff, "I want to help," Finn stammered. "My pa always said fear wins if you let it." "I ain't letting it." Colton knelt eye level with the boy. "Your pa was a wise man," he said gently. "But bravery isn't about standing in front of danger. It's about protecting what you love. Go protect your ma. That's how you fight today." Finn swallowed hard, then nodded and ran back home. Colton watched him go, a reminder that courage came in many forms. But his reflection was cut short by the long wail of a horn echoing from the western ridge. Black Jack's signal. The sheriff mounted his horse, Shadow, and rode out to face the enemy before they reached the town. Dust clouds rose behind him as the outlaw army thundered forward like a dark wave. Black Jack rode at the center, twin pistols gleaming. "Sheriff!" he bellowed across the widening gap. "You should have run last night. I gave you a chance." Colton kept his eyes fixed ahead. "This is my town, and my people. I don't run." Black Jack smirked. "Then you die." The outlaws charged like demons unleashed. Colton cracked his reins, his horse leaping into motion. He didn't wait. He struck first, diving into their formation with the precision of a hawk slicing through a flock. Gunfire exploded. Horses screamed. Dust swallowed the battlefield. Colton fought like a man possessed, each movement deliberate, every shot disciplined. He disarmed one outlaw, slammed another off his saddle, and used their chaos against them. The Brotherhood had numbers. The sheriff had purpose. But despite his skill, the outlaws pressed harder, surrounding him like wolves circling a lone mountain lion. Colton took a bullet in the shoulder, gritting his teeth as the impact spun him sideways. Before he could recover, Black Jack charged in, tackling him to the ground. The two men crashed into the dirt, fists flying, rage boiling over. Black Jack's strength was monstrous, Colton's will was unbreakable. "Look at you!" Black Jack snarled, pinning him. "Still pretending you fear nothing." Blood dripped from the sheriff's lip as he forced a grim smile. "Fear isn't the enemy. Men like you are." With a sudden surge, Colton rolled them over, grabbed a fistful of earth, and threw it into Black Jack's eyes. The outlaw roared, blind with rage, giving the sheriff just enough time to grab his revolver. But before he could fire, an unexpected sound cut through the chaos. Dozens of gunshots from behind, the townspeople. Against his orders, they had come. Finn the boy stood at the front, rifle steady despite shaking hands. "Sheriff ain't alone," he shouted. Hope flooded Colton's chest. The tide shifted. Outlaws panicked. Townsfolk advanced with fierce unity. Black Jack scrambled to his feet, wiped his eyes, and snarled. "This ain't over." He turned to flee, but Colton fired one precise shot that shattered the outlaw's pistol, sending him falling into the dirt. Within minutes, the remaining black coyotes scattered into the hills, defeated and broken. Silence gradually replaced gunfire. As dust settled, the townspeople gathered around their battered sheriff. Finn approached, eyes shining. "We weren't gonna let you fight alone." Colton placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. "Sometimes even a man with no fear needs people who believe in him." That evening, Redstone Ridge celebrated not just victory but unity. The sheriff, bruised and bandaged, stood before his people. "Today wasn't won because I feared nothing," he told them. "It was won because you found the courage to stand together. That's what makes a town strong. That's what makes legends." And as the sun dipped behind the mountains, painting the sky like embers cooling in a forge, the tale of the sheriff who feared nothing became a story told for generations. If you loved this story and want more powerful Western tales, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Your support helps keep these legends alive.